You've seen it happen before. No fanfare, no headlines, just sitting there like an old book in a dusty shop. The Ruger 1022, lightweight with wood stock, chambered in .22 long rifle, always seemed more like a scout's tool than a serious contender. For years, folks passed it by unless they were teaching a youngster how to shoot or knocking cans off fence posts. It was just too quiet, too plain, too gentle to sit alongside duty rifles and ARs. But then, things started winding different, not with big announcements or viral posts. It was a slow, steady change. Prepper types began taking notice. At first, just a couple folks picked it up, then a few more, then 10 at a time, stacking them in crates. Suddenly, this rimfire rifle that used to be overlooked was almost nowhere to be found. Today, we're diving into how one of America's most underestimated rifles earned its place as a staple of serious preparedness. Trusty, affordable, and far more capable than it's given credit for. The Ruger 1022 hit the market back in 1964, and since then, it's quietly become one of the most owned rimfire rifles in America, if not the world. You'll find them stashed away in gun lockers spanning 3 generations, passed down like a faithful old wrench, frequently used, sometimes respected, but rarely celebrated. Built on dependability, it never ignited debates or had folks stopping to marvel at the range. For ages, it's been seen as a stepping-stone firearm, one you'd give a teenager to learn trigger control or use to plink squirrels in the backyard. Stuck between the Red Ryder and the AR-15, it lives where nostalgia exists. But not much excitement. When shelves were crowded with bigger, louder calibers, tactical carbines, and dark polymer rifles brimming with rail systems and muzzle attachments, the 1022, with its wood stock and rotary mag, hardly caught a glance. Folks craving presence, noise, and an edge moved on quick. I was part of that crowd. I recall grabbing a 1022 years back and thinking it felt more like a prop than a piece of hardware. The kick was nearly non-existent. The sound hardly registered. It didn't have the thump of a 762 or the duty-ready heft of an M4. So it sank not onto a shelf but deep in my memory, a forgotten backdrop. No one boasted about a 1022 on social media. Nobody called it their go-to. But quietly, it waited. Then times changed. Between 2020 and 2025, ammo supplies grew unpredictable. Even calibers like 9mm and 5.56 vanished or skyrocketed in price almost overnight. Shelves stood bare for weeks. That's when many preppers, especially those considering group training, family safety, or just stretching every penny, started taking a closer look at true essentials. It wasn't just about owning a rifle anymore. It was about whether you could afford to run it, train with it, and keep it in shape when supply lines faltered. That's when the 1022 came back into focus. You could still find boxes of .22 long rifle for less than a fast food meal. 500 rounds cost less than 2 AR magazines. And while the cost of AR setups shot past $800, sometimes touching $1,000, the Ruger 1022 stayed stable, reliable, available, and priced under $300 in most places. That's when the prepper crowd started moving quietly, yet decisively. In early 2025, at a gear swap in Idaho, one fella drew attention, not for what he wore or the equipment he showcased. It was the crate, just a simple plastic bin. Inside, 5 Ruger 1022s. Each one cleaned, sighted, labeled by name. No fancy sights, no lasers, no extended rails, just straightforward builds ready to roll. When someone asked him why he had brought 5 identical rimfires rather than a couple of fancy carbines, his response summed it up. I don't want better. I want everyone to be useful. That right there, that was the prepper pivot in action. The mindset shifted from solo firepower to team readiness. Family, friends, small teams equipped with rifles that anyone could learn, maintain, and share with ease. That crate wasn't just stocked with rifles. It was packed with strategy. Calling the Ruger 1022 practical doesn't do it justice. This thing is a survival Swiss Army knife. Compact, lightweight, no fuss to maintain, and the ammo's pocket change cheap. But what truly sets it apart is how many logistical kinks it straightens in one go. A stock 1022 weighs in at a bit over 5 pounds. That's half the heft of a loaded AK and still lighter than a stripped AR. On foot, every ounce counts, painfully so. This rifle won't weigh you down on a trek and won't slow a teenager, a senior, or anyone else. Next up, the ammo. A .22 long rifle round won't win beauty prizes, but it's wise. 1,000 of them fit inside a lunchbox and hardly tip the scale. You can stockpile countless rounds without drawing attention or draining your funds. In a crisis, that counts far more than sheer muzzle speed. Noise is another angle many miss. The 10-22 runs quietly, and with a suppressor, it's practically a whisper. Perfect for small game, discreet protection, or even signaling. And if you miss, you're not advertising your spot like a 4th of July show. Too many folks overthink survival. They chase gear that looks good instead of gear that works when times get rough. But those prepping for real-world movement, resupply adaptability, see the value in the 10-22. Not because it wins shootouts, but because it buys time, mobility, and control. That kind of strategic thinking often gets overlooked. Out of the box, the 10-22 seems basic. Yet beneath the surface, it's one of the most adaptable rimfire platforms you'll find. If the AR-15 is the Barbie doll of rifles, the 10-22 is her low-key cousin with a whole barn of tools. Barrels, stocks, bolts, triggers, optics, you name it. You can strip this rifle and rebuild it for any role. Backpack gun, piece of cake. Suppressed pest rig for night watches? Consider it done. Tactical builds, takedown kits, drum mags. There's a 10-22 version for every task you can think of, and plenty you haven't. This is not just a pastime piece. It's a blueprint for resilience. When parts dry up and gear fails, a rifle you can adapt or salvage is worth its weight in gold. You don't need a shelf full of rifles if one can wear many hats. Many 10-22 owners don't stop at just one. They create purpose-built kits. One's suppressed, one's scoped for hunting, one's a trainer. Another sits ready in the truck. It's not hoarding. It's layered redundancy. Strategically planned, not overboard. Beyond function, the Ruger 10-22 offers something few rifles do, the joy of building. A joy that comes from understanding every pin, every spring, every detail by heart. It's the kind of rifle that rewards the curious. It invites you to tinker, fine-tune, reimagine. For folks who plan with both head and hands, that's where the magic lies. The reason many wrote off this rifle for years is simple. It doesn't intimidate. It doesn't bite back. It doesn't roar. It doesn't scream tactical or inspire combat fantasies. That alone made some dismiss it as non-serious. Even today, skeptics scoff at using a .22 long rifle for survival. They talk about rimfire ignition, its tame stopping power, and how it might bounce off a block if hit at an angle. But what those critics overlook is context, and context transforms everything. Sometimes the aim isn't to overpower, it's to remain unseen. Sometimes it's not about neutralizing a threat, but feeding 5 mouths for 3 days with no waste. Sometimes it's not about firepower, but about stealth and speed. In those scenarios, the 10-22 isn't a compromise, it's the wise choice. While others empty magazines chasing thrills, the 10-22 completes the task quietly, efficiently, without announcing to the world. It can take out a rabbit at 40 yards, teach a newcomer how to handle a rifle in an afternoon, or defuse a close-range risk without setting off every alarm on the street. The myth that it's just a toy often comes from folks who've never had to make every round count or train someone from scratch. Because when logistics outweigh raw power, perspectives shift. And when that happens, this little rimfire starts looking a whole lot more like a tool and a lot less like a plaything. In the prepper world, gear doesn't earn its keep through flash. It earns it through results, through time under stress, through repetition. That's how the Ruger 10-22 became a mainstay between 2022 and 2025. Not from buzz, but from performance. By early 2025, the dialogue had evolved. Online discussions and field meetups weren't obsessing over mag dumps or optics setups anymore. They were exchanging notes on equipping whole families with 10-22s. One prepper from Central Texas shared his setup, 6 Ruger 10-22s, each equipped with a red dot, sling, cleaning kit, and 2,000 rounds safely packed in labeled tins. It wasn't about showing off, it was a game plan. Proof of scalable, practical readiness. In Spokane, a small band ran exercises using only 10/22s, not because they had to, but because they sought unity. Every member equipped, every shooter trained. No wasted ammo, no recoil troubles. The goal wasn't fire superiority, it was togetherness. And that's what the 10/22 made possible. More than specs on paper, it's what folks actually count on that matters. When you see the same rifle show up in emergency kits, glove compartments, and hidden stashes nationwide, that's when it becomes clear utility trumps image. Preppers don't chase fads. They don't trust gear for being loud or pricey. They test, they confirm, and by 2025, more and more of them put their faith in the Ruger 10/22 to manage real-life challenges. To outsiders, owning a bunch of rimfires might seem nuts. Why not buy a top-notch rifle and spend the rest on supplies? But that misses the entire point. A solo premium rifle offers firepower, but it doesn't create a team. When prepping for prolonged disruptions, it's not just about you. It's about how quickly and effectively you can equip others. That's where the 10/22 fits seamlessly. This rifle isn't merely about cost. It's about uniformity. When everyone in your squad runs the same setup, everything streamlines. Training eases. Ammo is common. Parts swap out easily. Maintenance becomes second nature, not a challenge. In rural Kentucky, a group began stockpiling 10/22s in early 2024. By mid-2025, they had compiled coordinated kits for 12 people. Same rifles, same slings, same suppressors, same mags. No confusion. One system, many users. In high-stress conditions, when fine motor skills falter and dirt gets into everything, consistency isn't optional. It's essential. That's why preppers don't just buy one 10/22. They build frameworks around it. In the prepper space, value isn't about coolness. It's built on use, on time, on pressure. Over recent years, voices have been growing regarding why the 10/22 regularly surpasses expectations. Not for firepower, but for practicality. One user on Reddit explained, instead of splurging on a fancy rifle, he stuck with his trusty Ruger. Not because of nostalgia, but because it made sense. He could afford to practice, to store ammo, to sustain the rifle without straining his budget. So rather than stretch for a rifle he couldn't afford to use, he grabbed extra mags, bulk 22 long rifle, and invested the rest into basics: water, food, medical supplies. It's not flashy, but it's wise. Another thread highlighted something even more crucial: training. The low recoil and weight of the 10/22 mean anyone, be it your spouse, your teenage son, or the neighbor, can learn to handle it quickly. In high-pressure scenarios, simplicity turns dependence into assets. Elsewhere, a prepper shared his full setup: 6 Ruger 10/22s, all fitted with sights, slings, and thousands of rounds, meticulously labeled and ready. It wasn't about boasting. It was about creating a system. No excess, no confusion, zero idle time. Just rifles prepped for anyone, anywhere, with no hand-holding. That's the mindset. In prepper circles, the 10/22 isn't a collector's piece. It's a tool for survival. And the more things unravel, the more valuable that becomes. The Ruger 10/22 never needed fanfare. It wasn't designed to draw eyes. It was built to serve. And over time, the dedicated long-term planners, the quiet preppers, have come to recognize it for its true merit. Not a rifle for arguments, but a rifle for results. When the aim is function over flare, consistency over chaos, the 10/22 keeps stepping up, quietly doing its duty without fuss, without fail. If you've used a 10/22 in your preparation, whether stock, suppressed, scoped, or spare, share your experience below. I'm keen to learn how you've set it up, how it's tuned, and its role in your arsenal. Should this deep dive have offered you value, you know the drill. Hit those like and subscribe buttons and leave your thoughts below. We've got more on the way: genuine gear, battle-tested setups, and straight talk straight from the field. Train smart, stay sharp. I'll catch you on the next one.